Yep. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast, part of the Bet Rivers Network. The day after for Met fans, and driving around today, I heard the Met fans, and everyone is always creative and living in this world of angst, and Met fans like to suffer, okay? Just like Jet fans like to suffer. Recently, Giant fans like to suffer. In the old days, Red Sox fans like to suffer. But Met fans like to suffer. And they thought the suffering was over in the days of Cohen. Well, you know what? It's not over. And this was as bad as ever, as bad as 2007. And who to discuss it with than the manager who managed more games than anybody ever with the New York Mets, Terry Collins, and also one of my all-time favorites. Terry, welcome. How are you?
Great, Mike. Good to see you.
As always, Terry, a pleasure. All right, you watch this slow drip from the best record in baseball to where they finished not making the expanded playoffs, Terry. Tell me what you saw.
Well, Mike, I've always believed this. I always think it starts. The game's about pitching, and if you don't pitch, you're not going to win games. And they had some injuries on their pitching staff, but with the new age pitching going on here, I don't like it. I don't like what's going on. I still think you can train guys to get deeper in games, to throw more pitches, and still stay healthy. And I understand about, the power, everything. They always look for power pitchers today. But you still got to be able to command the baseball. And even though they had guys that, threw the ball pretty good, balls in the middle of the plate get hit. And, that's for me, if they're going to get better, they've got to go find some pitching.
Listen, they took a big gamble with their pitching staff and then tried to throw it in the lap of the kids down the stretch, which was very hard to do in the last couple of weeks. But Terry, you know what? This team had talent. Alonso had a great year, and he's probably gone. I don't think he wants to be here anymore. Soto had a great last 100 games. Lindor did what? Hey, those are outrageous numbers for a shortstop. Nimmo had a good year. But you know what? They didn't catch the ball. Their defense was awful. 22nd overall, 29th in September. It just seemed to me this team never clicked. It never felt like they ever were on the same page all year. Forget just the pitching, even with the lineup.
Yep. Yeah. Mike, I totally agree with you. I mean, when I was brought up in the game, we were brought up, we were taught pitching and defense wins championships. And so, and if you catch the ball behind you, your pitching's that much better. So if you already have good pitching, you're going to get better at it. But I agree. They never seem to get a 2-out single that drove in a run.
Never.
It's in that kind of, they all raved about, how many stolen bases they had. Well, you got to drive them in. Who cares how many stolen bases?
Worthless stat. I agree. Worthless. Totally worth. They didn't get clutch hits. They never hit in the clutch all year. Last year, they hit in the clutch all the time. Last year, they were never dead in the game. This year, they were never alive in the ninth inning. 0 for 70. No one else in baseball did that. The worst teams didn't do that. The Colorado Rockies didn't do that. 0 for 70, trailing after 8 innings with that lineup, with that power. I mean, you got to be kidding me. It just seemed. Now, I don't know. Listen, I always tell the truth. I heard rumblings about Lindor and Soto. I don't know if it's true. Maybe there's a little jealousy towards Soto, which would be natural. I don't know what's going on there, but it just seemed to me like they were never on the same page as a team all year.
And if you watch the games, that you had nothing else to go on except that. But I don't know any of that's
right
in the clubhouse stuff. I talked to Carlos a couple of times this summer, just to during the good times. But when they were going through a rough stretch, I'd give him a call, and he kind of reiterated. You said, we just don't seem to play well at times. And you're right with that lineup. I mean, even though they had some young players with Vientos and Beatty and Acuna kid went and the catcher had an up and down year.
Yep.
You still those first 5 guys, just like you said, you can add McNeil to that. They're quality big league players who can hit. And you're right. And it just seems like if those guys didn't get it done, it didn't get done. And
No, there was no chemistry there. There was no magic there this year. There was no pick me up. This guy's going to pick me up. Then they played bad defense, and we know the pitching destroyed the bullpen. But let's be honest, they got lauded after everybody. You go back and look. Everybody in baseball thought they did great at the trading deadline. They went out and got one of the great bullpen arms in baseball. He was a disaster in Helsley, a disaster. Mullins, to me, was always a gamer. He never had two worse months in his life than he had here. The trades didn't help the Mets at all, and they didn't address starting pitching. Peterson collapsed. Holmes got tired. The other guys are hurt. All of a sudden, they had no pitching. They couldn't get into the fifth inning of a game.
I talked to Carlos one day about bullpen usage, and he was talking to me, and he said, how did you run into this? I said, my guys went 7 innings, Carlos.
They never went 7 innings. They never went 5 innings.
And I said, I had some quality guys that got you deep in games, and to where you could have a little bit easier job of matching up who you wanted to face certain guys to face at late in the game. And I felt bad for him because the poor guy, he had every night he had to manage the bullpen through 4 2/3 innings every night. That's hard to do.
Let's be honest. All they had to do was beat the Nationals, beat the Marlins the last 2 weekends to make the playoffs. They wind up tied with the Reds, who have, no talent compared to them. They do have a great manager in Francona. He's one of the all-time great managers, and he did a brilliant job. And they have some good young pitchers who pitched some great games for them. They didn't score a lot of runs. As we know, they eked out games. But the Mets couldn't beat the Marlins, which is a historical thing. They couldn't beat the Nationals. The last 2 weeks with that talent, that tells me something's wrong with that team.
Yeah, Mike, I've always said, the real good teams, they beat you in September. Yep. They beat you in September. And we can go back and talk about all the great, I mean, I lived it. I mean, we got hot in late August.
Hey. I never saw a guy carry a team more than your guy carried the team. He came to the team against a lot of people's wishes, and then you pushed to get him there and had to use Jimmy Leland to get him there.
Yep.
And he comes and he dominates when he came. He was brilliant and carried the team to a World Series.
Yeah, when I watch games, I used to watch when I was watching the Orioles, and I had Mullins in center field. I loved the way he played. I
liked Mullins. I have watched him forever in the American League. The guy was a gamer. He stunk with the Mets.
Mike, if we had answers, we could have helped him a month ago or 3 weeks ago.
Well, how about Helsley? What do you think? The guy's an all-world closer. He comes in the 8th inning and he can't get an out.
I'm flabbergasted by it, and it's always one of the things you always hear, well, my mechanics are off. Well, you've got so-called all of these new pitching deals they have. That shouldn't be an issue. And so, it was shocking to watch it at the end.
Terry, take it from a managerial standpoint, because the fans look at this, and I'm sure the owner, who's a fan, looks at this with all his money and all his success and everything and says, why can't my manager just shake this team up? Turn over a buffet table, get these guys together and get a couple of wins out of them and get me to the playoffs. It's not that easy, is it?
It isn't, Mike. And, I think those days are gone. I don't hear anymore about managers going on tirades too much. And, that was what you did once in a while. I've seen Lasorda and Leland and LaRusse,
Canella.
Yeah. Lou. I mean, and to where, but I just don't see that. That's where the game has kind of changed a little bit anymore now, and you talk about always in spring training, and Carlos, I heard him talk early in the season about, hey, we're going to hold our guys accountable. Well, that's great, but they got to buy into it, and so sometimes there's nothing wrong with, letting them have it once in a while. Again, they get it. They're professional athletes. They understand that they once in a while got to shake the boat up a little bit. So, I wish I could have helped in some way, but because I was rooting hard for them, and I just this past weekend I said they got to beat the Marlins. They got to sweep the Marlins, and that the first night was just, I was watching the game and I just said, my God. This is how you get into playoffs.
As you did that way. And yesterday, the Reds, Brewers actually, with nothing to play for, win the game because they're a terrific team.
Yes.
And the Reds had beat them twice. And listen, the Reds aren't that good. We know that. And the Reds have to sit there, and the Mets get shut out. I mean, they get shut out in Florida. And in Florida, the Marlins are on the field dancing around like they won the World Series because they hate the Mets, so they want to do that. But they didn't score a run yesterday. The fans are like, how can we have this lineup and not score a run?
I agree, Mike. Somebody asked me. I was in New York yesterday doing the Tunnel of Towers run, and people were asking me about the games, and I said, well, first of all, the Brewers are going to, they're because they've got some, in 5 days they're going to play their guys today. Yep. So I said the Mets they've got to win this game. This is This isn't a game where you hope that the Reds are going to lose, because they are going to lose. Because the Brewers are going to put their A lineup out there.
They did, yeah.
And I said, so this is a game, a must win. And I thought they're going to come out flying high, and they've got. And again, I watched about 4 innings of it, and I'm just, I didn't know what to say. I couldn't. People would come by me and say, well, "Are you watching?" I said, "Yeah." I don't know what. I have no way to help and nothing to say.
And the Yankees, who had a shaky year, closed with 11-13 and 8 wins in a row. Okay,
yep.
Hit 1 million home runs, win their last 8 games. Toronto, which went into a slump, had to win their last 4 games to keep the Yankees off. They win the last 4 games to win the division. They win 13-4 yesterday against Tampa. And the people are saying, why can't the Mets do that? It's a tough thing, and especially when your payroll's $340 million.
Yeah, I will tell you, Steve's done everything he possibly could do.
Absolutely. I agree. Hey, listen, Stearns we can talk about, and the trades didn't work out. That's on him. But the owner, he wrote every check. That's all you can ask him to do. He brought Soto here, and that changed the culture. They had to win, and he spent $340 million. I mean, that's all you can ask him to do.
Absolutely. That is it. That's right. And after that, it's they got to go. It's on the team. I mean, they're the guys who go out and try to execute it. And this is the one thing that we've talked about many times, Mike. This proves that money doesn't buy championships. So talent, and how you go about playing the game wins championships.
And Terry, I understand that starting pitching has changed, and most of these guys are 5-inning pitchers. But I'm telling you, I watched the Yankees through good times and bads, and they had a 2-month bad stretch. Having an ace makes a big difference. Having a guy who can take the ball and get you out of that losing streak and pitch that game. Fried had a great year for the Yankees. He really did. So did Rodon, who I don't love. He had a terrific year. They had a 1-2 punch with those 2 lefties. That made a big difference. It really did.
I agree. I mean, that's it's always when you're managing a team and you've got your ace going. When you leave your apartment and head to the stadium, you're thinking, okay, I got to figure out how to score 3 runs because we're going to win this game tonight because my guy's going to shut them down.
Yep.
Especially in those big games. I mean, how many times did we see Matt Harvey go out there in big games and he shut them down?
Yep.
And that's what you had to have.
Look at this Crochet with the Red Sox, how good he's been. He's been unbelievable.
Absolutely.
I mean, unbelievable.
So to have that ace that just kind of you don't get in slumps when you got those aces you can turn to. They keep you from having losing streaks. And so to have that lead dog in those rotations means a lot.
Do you think the Mets with that should go out and get themselves at least one of these, like a Michael King or somebody who can be a front of the rotation guy? Listen, McClain might be a terrific pitcher, but he's had like a handful of starts. We don't know that yet.
That's correct.
Go get yourself a bona fide guy you can put in the start of the rotation.
And again, Mike, I understand the dangers of signing, high-priced pitchers to long-term deals. I mean, I understand that, but pitching wins games. I mean, pitching wins championships, and you got to find that guy Rodon. This guy takes the ball every 5th day.
Hey, listen, I'm not a fan of his. I didn't like him when he came here. I've never been a big fan, but he pitched great this year. He was 7 innings almost every time, 6-7 innings every time out. Plus, he had the lowest batting average against in the majors this year. The guy who pitched well all year. Now, let's see how he pitches in the postseason. With the Yankees, that's what it means. And they haven't been good against good teams, so we'll leave that alone. But we'll see how they do. But that gives them a 1-2 punch. And Freed against Crochet, that's worth the price of admission. And, in the first game of the playoffs, those two, that's going to be a great matchup. Let me ask you this going forward with the Mets. We know they have to improve their defense. That goes without saying. Okay. And they're going to do what they have to do with the pitching. They have to improve their defense. Is it too early to make Juan Soto an everyday DH?
Well,
he's not a good fielder. Let's be honest.
I'm thinking about, Mike, you're looking at teams, the Red Sox, one with maybe arguably one of the best DHs in the history of the game.
Yep.
And by not having to go out every day and beat your legs up in the field and hit, you can be dangerous.
And he's a great offensive player.
Great offensive player.
And he has a better concept at the plate than just about anybody I've seen in a long time. He really does. I didn't get to see Ted Williams, but this guy, he manages the pitcher and the strike zone about as well as anybody I've ever seen. He really does.
And I agree with that. And I know he's still very, very young, but when you start assembling your team, you got to take a look at that. You got to take a look and say, look, we've got to catch the ball better in the outfield. And if we find a guy who's really, really good, okay, maybe once in a while you can, get him out there and keep him in the action. But I'll tell you, that's got to be something that's got to run through their thought process.
The other thing is, if I got to think, Alonso, I got to think this year some team out there is going to beat the Mets down and beat them to Alonso. That Alonso is going to get his contract this year. He had a great year, and he's underrated. People have sold him short. He plays every day. He's a gamer. He's a good teammate. Okay, I mean, the guy doesn't. I understand there's this prejudice that right-handed first basemen get older faster than left-handed first basemen. I don't know if it's historically it's supposed to be true. All right, that he's going to break down. Let's say he's not a Met anymore. Do you think from what you've seen that Vientos can be an everyday first baseman?
Yeah, I do. I do. I mean, I saw him make some plays at third and, pretty athletic. The one thing I like about Pete works at it. Okay.
Yeah.
And there are guys, maybe he's not going to win a Gold Glove,
right.
But I'll tell you one thing, he shows up
every day, every day.
And he works his butt off to try to make plays, and I'll tell you, talk about a guy being accountable. This guy stands up at the end of a game and he'll answer questions.
And got a base hit in the eighth, and is yelling to the dugout to come on, let's go. Yesterday, he's a gamer. Yeah. I'll tell you, the guy who's better than I thought he was is Beatty. I never liked Beatty, but I got to admit he had a heck of a good second half, and he's a good fielder. Maybe he's their third baseman. They may have to give him a real shot.
I'll tell you, I thought he played great third base. I thought he played great.
He did.
And I know Carlos tried to jug up to get the lineup and move guys around at different positions. But, sometimes I think, Mike, in today's game, they try to make everybody too versatile.
Right.
To have a Jeff McNeil on your team is tremendously valuable. But you can't have 4 or 5 of them because you want some concrete consistency.
And that hurts your defense when you do that, when you move
the
ball over.
I agree with that. Yes. I agree with that. Yeah.
No question about it. They need to catch the ball a lot better than they did. They were 22nd on the year, 29th in September catching the baseball. That's bad. That's really bad. What do you do if you're Mendoza? You had a good year last year. You waited to be a manager. You had a really good first year, a special first year. You had a rough second year. Great expectations, big payroll. All right, you're going to get your shot here, but you got to get out of the gate next year, or they're going to be clipping at your heels. You know that, okay? Bottom line, what do you think he has to do, if anything, different in year 3?
Well, one of the things I think that he does very well, Mike, he seems like he's the same guy every day. And, players like that. Players really like that. So, he's got to come in with the same attitude. But I just think, there's something stuff once in a while, like you and I are talking, I'm sure Carlos is saying the same thing. So next spring, when you get to spring training, I think one of your things in speech is, hey, look, we've got to get better in certain areas. So we're going to make sure this spring
work on fundamentals.
Exactly. We work on the fundamental sides of the game so we don't make those kind of mistakes, because that's what killed us, especially in the last 2 months. So,
they were a bad situational team, and they didn't catch the baseball at all.
Yeah, and for me, the more you do that stuff, the more you make it a priority, players end up buying into it. They end up saying, yeah, you know what, this guy, and again, once in a while, you got to set an example. Hey, if somebody's not buying in, You got to move on past him and get somebody else. I've always amazed by how Bobby Cox guys would come into Atlanta, and Bobby had said, "Hey, here's what we do here in Atlanta, and if you don't want to you don't buy into it, I'll get somebody else." And that's why I looked at 14 years in a row. This guy was in the playoffs, and so that speaks volumes for me. And I think it's Carlos needs to take a look at that.
All right. Playoffs are wide open this year. Teams have had hot and cold. Yankees were terrible. They finished hot. Beat bad teams, but they're hot. Brewers had the best record. Dodgers look like they got a little hotter and got their little healthier later in the season. All right. Wide open this year. Phillies, some people like the Phillies. What team do you look at right now? If you had to pick one, which one do you think is your World Series winner this year?
Well, the one thing I saw from the Dodgers, and you just mentioned it, their starting pitching was half of them were hurt all year.
All year.
All of a sudden, now they're all coming back. Snell's coming back.
Yep.
And they're not tired. They're not going to be tired.
No, they're fresh.
They're going to be pretty fresh. So I think they're going to be really tough to beat. I like the Phillies too. I like the Phillies. They're going to miss Wheeler immensely.
A lot.
But
what a wonderful guy. What a wonderful player and a great guy too.
And a great guy. Great guy.
I loved him. One of my all-time favorites was Wheeler.
And so I think they're going to be good. The one thing is, and I don't know why this happens, but I like the fact that the Yankees are playing first. They're going out and playing. I don't like to sit for 5 days.
I agree.
That killed us. That killed us in 2015.
I agree.
We had all the momentum in the world going, and then we just had to sit around for 5.5 days waiting to get back on the field.
I think you're so much better when you play baseball every day. I totally agree. I think if you get through, I understand you can get beat and something can happen wild in a best of three. But you know what? If you get through that first series, you got a lot of momentum. I agree.
I totally agree, Mike. That's what we're watching every year. What was the last year? I think everybody that had a bye got beat in the first round.
Absolutely. It's a big advantage. I totally agree. Listen, pleasure to talk to you as always. We'll get together, play some golf this winter. Good to see you. Thank you for a couple of minutes.
Thanks for having me on. Good to see you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Terry. Okay. Terry Collins, Met manager, and like I said, one of the great guys ever. It's funny. I always say when he came to New York, everyone was saying, "Oh, he's tough to get along with, this and that." Turned out to be the greatest guy. I'm telling you, everyone in the media loves him. The guy's a wonderful guy, one of the great guys ever. Now, I want to get to the Cohen remarks. Okay, you heard Stearns today talk about we have to pitch better. We have to, do a better job catching the baseball. All true. He's the one who didn't address starting pitching. He's the one that left them barren starting pitching. He made some deals that everyone thought was good. I was watching the next day, and they rated their haul from the trade deadline number 1. So let's be honest. Everyone thought getting Halsey was great. He turned out to be a disaster. I like the Mullins move, so I'll take the hit for that. I always liked Mullins. Always liked him. Wanted the Yankees to get him last year. The bottom line is he was dreadful. He couldn't play. Sometimes a guy goes somewhere for a couple of months and he's just awful. He was terrible. He never got started. You never saw the real Mullins, but the Mets don't want to hear about that. He was terrible here. This team was missing something. And I touched on something there that I really believe. If you're going to get better defensively, if you're the Mets, it is time. Go get yourself much more athletic in the outfield. Whether you go get an everyday center fielder, whether you go get an athletic right fielder, you can live with Nimmo in left field. I know people talking about trading Nimmo. They're not going to trade Nimmo, I don't think. Nimmo's a good bat. He's a good player. You can leave him in left field. He's not going to kill you there. Don't put him in center field. Leave him alone. Put him in left field. I think it is time. I understand he's still young, but he's got a lot of baseball under his belt. And I don't think Alonso is coming back. I don't think Alonso wants to come back. I don't think he likes the way he was treated this year. He rolled the dice. He had a great year. He'll get offers this year. He will get concrete, good, solid offers. And I don't think the Mets are going to wind up re-signing him. I'll be surprised if they do. I think Vientos goes to first base. Beatty goes to third base. Okay, I'll live with that and give Vientos a full shot. I think he'll do fine. I don't know how he's going to do defensively. I think offensively he'll do fine. I think it's time to make Soto an everyday DH. I think that solves all your issues. You let Soto concentrate on what he does and take the outfield out of play now. It's going to happen within a couple of years anyway. His future is as an everyday DH. He can spend the last 10 years of his career as Big Papi, okay, which is not too bad. All he's got to do is hit big home runs, get big at bats, and hit in the clutch and hit in the postseason. He does that, they'll love him forever. Soto's a great offensive player. Nothing short of that. He's not a good defensive player. I would yank him out of right field full time and say to him, listen, I want you to be RDH. I want you to become a full-time DH. That's it. And make that your career. I think it's the time, and the time is now to do that. And get yourself athletic players who fit the way you want. The Mets were top heavy, but they weren't only top heavy. Even the big guys didn't hit in the clutch. Look how many solo home runs. And Soto's numbers are good. I understand that. But look how many solo home runs he hit. And he didn't hit like he usually hits in the clutch. And the Mets never, ever rallied like they did last year. Last year, they were never dead. This year, they were never alive in the ninth inning. Ever. 0 for 70. Last year, you couldn't get them out in those spots. They were always holding up those OMG things and jumping around like nutcases. You know that? None of that this year. This team was a bad fit. And that tells me if I'm the manager, if I'm Stearns, if I'm the owner, I don't go into the same season next year, whether I make changes in my coaching staff behind the manager, whether I make a bigger move, a bigger change than I think I would have. I don't go into next season with the same chemistry. Now, I don't think Alonso's going to be here, so that's a big change, number one. But I don't think you want this to feel like the same team, considering how this team never clicked. I am not rerunning this group. And I would go out and get a lead dog that I can count on, like a Michael King for the rotation, assuming you check him out and he's healthy. I'm just giving you one name. There are others. I bring in a veteran guy to be my lead guy. I can't count on Senga. I can't count on him. He's got good stuff, but I can't count on him. He's fragile. He's injury prone. He's a little nuts. I can't count on him. So I understand they got a lot of guys who pitched in, who got starts this year, who were back. A lot of them you don't want. Did Holmes do a good job? He did a good job. Did Peterson do a good job in the first half? Yes, he was dreadful in the second half, and they went too far with him. Now, Cohen made the statement today, and just in case, and I'm sure you've heard it, but just in case you didn't, I will read it to you. It's not a missive. I'm not turning it into a missive. There's only one George Steinbrenner. Met fans everywhere. This is from your owner. Met fans everywhere. I owe you an apology. He doesn't really, but that's a good way to put it. You did your part. He did. He challenged the Met fans to show up, and they showed up. And they showed up in record numbers. You did your part by showing up and supporting the team. We didn't do our part. I think he's smart to take some of the blame there. We will do a postmortem and figure out the obvious and the less obvious reasons why the team didn't perform up to your and my expectations. Okay? That is a very, very good way to go about it. It really is. Okay? Now let me finish. Didn't perform up to your and my expectations. We are all feeling raw emotions today. I know how much time and effort you have put into this team. The result was unacceptable. Your emotions tell me how much you care, and it continues to motivate the organization to do better. Thank you to the best fans in sports. If you're a Met fan, you appreciate that today. No, I don't think you have a whole lot of issues with your owner. Took a little bit of the hit. He promised you this was unacceptable. And he promised you that they'll do the obvious and the less obvious to make the changes. I can see where Stearns will rankle the Met fan. He comes off like the typical Ivy League, I got the answers, don't bother me guy, okay? he comes across like, you know, from the Theo school of executive. I got the answers. They're in my little book here, and we'll get it done. Don't bother me. Don't ask me any questions. Don't bother me. Okay. I understand that. I don't think, and from what I've heard, I don't know Stearns from a hole in the wall. I've never had a conversation with him. I hear he's not a bad guy, personally. I mean, that's what I've heard. I don't know him, like I said. That's not the point. I make that point because he comes across like one of those guys that the average Met fan is like, "Give me a break with this guy. He's got no emotion. He's got no heart. He's got a slide rule, and he's got his artificial intelligence and his algorithms and listen, it just might be the way he comes across. He doesn't have a whole lot of personality. Okay, I mean." This guy couldn't recruit you out of a burning building. Let's be honest, okay? But that doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's doing. Now, you want to say that Milwaukee without him had the best record in baseball this year, and maybe his number 2 was the answer, Matt Arnold? Well, you want to get on him, you could do that. Maybe Matt Arnold was the genius, and it wasn't Stearns who got $10 million to come to the Mets because Stearns leaves, and they had the best record in baseball without him. I'm sure his critics will give you that. Doesn't mean it's true. Doesn't mean it's not true. He can still show us what he can do here. He made some moves. I didn't think he addressed the starting pitching enough. I understand his premise about the Met Lab and all this stuff. I think he overdoes it. I think he still need an ace. They might think they have one. Obviously, you had a young man step up and show you that he can be something special. He's only had a handful of starts. You don't want to put that on. Maybe he's going to be an ace, but you don't want to put that on him next year. Let him show you he's an ace before you demand that he's an ace. Go get yourself a front of the rotation horse that you can count on for 200 innings next year and to lead the way. You need a lead dog. You really do. It matters. Teams play better behind their big gun. They stop losing streaks with their big gun. When they know they can get that well-pitched game, it gives them confidence. There's nothing wrong with having that guy. And the Mets can afford him. Okay? And they may be saving some money along the way this year because I don't think Alonso's coming back. I think he's had enough. I think his feelings were hurt, and he played through it all year, and he gave the Mets a great season, if that's his swan song. I understand if you're a Met fan, you have every right to be insanely angry with this team. This was not only a team that had a $340 million payroll, it was a collection of players that never seemed like they were on the same page this year, never showed you any hearts, and down the stretch showed you no guts. Zero. No guts. My wife just asked me if I fed the dog. Yes, the answer is yes. Of course I fed her. The bottom line, of course I fed you, baby. Uh, this team had no heart and no guts. And when you go into the last couple of weeks of the season and you can't beat the Cincinnati Reds, who their ownership treats the season like an afterthought. They don't deserve to go to the playoffs from an ownership standpoint, but their kids and their manager took them to the playoffs. And Francona already paid off being Francona, but that's because he's one of the great managers ever. And he took that collection with a couple of starting pitchers and maybe one everyday player to the playoffs. But you can't beat the Nationals. And you know that if you go out the last day of the season and you're looking at that scoreboard, and the Reds had the lead in the 3rd inning, and I think it was the 3rd inning yesterday. I mean, the Brewers had the lead yesterday in the 3rd inning. Everybody started, remember, yesterday at the same time. Okay? On the last day of the season, as you know, everybody starts at 3:07 so that everyone plays at the same time and then, everything's happening at the same time and the whole thing. Okay, add a little drama. No one has an advantage. Blah 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 blah. Okay, no one sees what's going on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you can see, like the Yankees knew that Toronto had a huge lead, and they still went out there and won that game late. Now, the Yankees finished the season strongly. We know that. Yesterday, the Brewers took the lead on the Reds. Reds scored in the second inning, 1-0. They led 2-1 after 3. And then the Brewers got 3 in the bottom of the 4th. So the Mets knew 4 innings into that game that the Brewers had a 4-2 lead. The bottom of the 4th, Miami put up a 4 spot. The Mets couldn't generate a run the rest of the game, knowing that all they had to do was make a comeback against the Marlins to go to the playoffs. And they couldn't even generate a run in that game. What a bunch of gutless wonders. I mean, are you kidding me? You couldn't even generate a run? But that was symbolic of who they were all year. 0-70 after 8 innings. 0-70. And as you saw Alvarez break the bat over his knee after he swung at ball 4, that would have loaded the bases in the 8th inning. That's all you needed to see from this team this year. Something was missing. They were 29th catching the ball. Their pitching was deplorable down the stretch. And Stearns left the team without a lot of starting pitching. He left them naked in the terms of starting pitching, and it destroyed the season, as did their defense and as did their lack of chemistry the entire season. Somebody in the organization should have been smart enough to realize, I need to shake this team up in June, before the trade deadline's over. I need to straighten this team out now because there's something not right. And they didn't do that. And Mullins wasn't going to be the guy to shake the team up. That wasn't going to be the answer, even though he was dreadful. And I admit I wanted him because I've always liked him, but he played 2 months of awful baseball. So now you're looking about going forward, and you're looking at your young kids and saying, oh, we have a good farm system, and we got these pitchers who have major league experience. So I have all these different guys who started. Yeah, you still need a horse at the start of the rotation. You still need an ace at the start of the rotation. You got a lot of decisions to make, and you got to make your defense better. And the way you do that is by getting a lot more athletic in the outfield. Take Soto out of the outfield now and make him the DH every day. That will start you on the road to where you need to go. And you need to shake up that team and find out what Mendoza needs to know, if he hasn't put his finger on it yet, is what was this team missing this year? Why did it not connect? Why did it have so little toughness, cohesiveness, chemistry? It wasn't just about their pitching. It was also about their lopsided offense, their top-heavy offense, their offense when they don't need offense but never get an offense in the clutch, their inability to come from behind, their inability to catch the ball in the big spot. Add it all up, and you have a team that wins 83 games when it was 21 games over 500 and is carrying a $340 million payroll. Here's what you didn't expect when you got Cohen. Here's what you thought was completely over when you got Soto. Still the same old Mets. Sign up for the free Mike Francesa newsletter. You'll get exclusive content, contests, offers. Go to MikeFrancesAPodcast.com and sign up. We'll see you later.